we get started, and most of the faculty who are with us are going to introduce themselves in the course of this. So we'll get started. We'll probably have a few more folks join us. Again, we're recording, and thank you for joining us for this conversation with the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force. We're happy to have all of you with us today, and I'm grateful to the members of the task force for joining us on a Saturday to share some information about the early stages of their work and their plans for this year. My name is Dan Parrish. I know most of you. I'm the Vice President for College Advancement here at Colby-Sawyer, and I'll be facilitating today's session and moderating the discussion. I think most of you are Zoom veterans at this point, but I will just point out a few things. We are recording, so we'll make this recording available on the Homecoming website next week, and we'll share information about how to find that with people. If you're unfamiliar with Zoom, you can open the chat box by moving your mouse on your computer or tap your mobile device, and you can find the chat option at the bottom, so you'll see comments from folks in there. And if you've got questions or comments that come up as Lynn Garriock and other members of the task force are talking, you can enter those comments into the chat, and I'll keep track of them and make sure that we get to them. If you want to change your view, if right now all you see is me because I'm speaking, and then when somebody else speaks, all you see is them. Again, if you move your mouse or tap your mobile device, you should be able to choose how you view the gallery of speakers in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen. So you can choose a gallery view. Most of you know that, so I'm sorry for the remedial lesson. Thanks again for joining us. Without any further ado, let me hand things over to Professor Lynn Garriock from the School of Business and Social Sciences. Lynn is the chair of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force, and she is going to start off the discussion this morning, and then she's going to introduce some of her colleagues. Thanks so much, Lynn.
Thank you, Dan. So what I wanted to start with is how we even have a task force this year and possibly in the future. Last year, Sue Stupner invited a group of students to join the faculty meeting, and I was moderating the faculty meeting. These students wanted to talk about some of the problems that occur in our classrooms that go unaddressed, and specifically some of the racially insensitive comments that are made, sometimes, frankly, comments that are bigoted. And the students shared their stories, they shared concrete examples, and I think the faculty was quite moved. For two reasons they were quite moved by the student panel. One, the students genuinely shared things that had happened in our classrooms, and we recognized ourselves in it as they were describing some of the problems. But also, they were so knowledgeable about race theory, feminist thought. They actually really educated the faculty. A few weeks later, Robin invited an expert on microaggressions and an expert on talking about privilege that people might have, especially if they come from white upper middle class background. And so we did a two-day workshop with this expert. And frankly, I had mixed feelings about the workshop. And I had mixed feelings for two reasons. The first reason was the faculty were not all on the same page. We had some faculty that this was really new information and found it very valuable. And then we had some other faculty, and I'm going to include me, I'm going to include the other faculty that are here today, who knew the information already. We teach it, and so we didn't feel like necessarily the workshop furthered our knowledge. But the other concern that I had with the workshop was we were focusing on microaggressions, so interpersonal problems with race and sexuality and gender. And what we weren't getting to is some of the institutional and systematic discrimination that happens in higher ed, not just at Colby-Sawyer, but in higher ed in general. And so, you know, we went on we went on summer break for the faculty anyway. And then Amy Cooper happened. And if you don't remember who Amy Cooper is, she's the one who choked her dog while making a false claim against a Black man. And George Floyd was killed. And I use those as two examples because in reality, there were a lot of deaths and killings of Black people in the spring and certainly throughout the years. So it's not like this is new. But at that point, I felt like I need to do something. And I reached out to our academic vice president, Laura Sykes, who's going to talk in a few minutes, and really asked if we could start an equity, diversity, inclusion task force. And unbeknownst to me, the alums wrote a really powerful letter. I'm still emotional about the letter that they wrote, and some of the really disturbing experiences our students have had at Colby-Sawyer. And so senior staff talked about it, agreed that we should have a task force. I wanted to lead the task force for this year, and so I am chairing it for this year. Hopefully, if we have a task force next year, a new person will come on and chair it so that we get new ideas. And so what we have is administrators, faculty members, staff members, alums, and students. And the faculty and staff were chosen for a variety of reasons, but the main reason we have these folks is that they already lead a group of people across campus, and so they have a voice and a platform to take our work and work with other faculty. But also they were chosen because they have a pretty good background in feminist thought, race theory, and other things that can really help inform the task force. So what I thought I would do today is first talk about the mission of the task force, and then have the members, some of the members of the task force, introduce themselves. So the mission of the task force is to assess the current state of equity, diversity, and inclusion on campus and ask a variety of folks from staff, faculty, students, and alums. How do you feel about the climate on campus? We also want to investigate and recommend and implement best practices to increase diversity and inclusion on the campus, especially increasing underrepresented groups, including African Americans, folks from rural areas, folks that are poor, etc. And then we also want to make short-term and long-term recommendations to senior staff and the board about trying to institutionalize equitable and inclusive policies and practices to make this community a safe community for faculty, staff, and students. Hopefully, we will address prejudice, stereotyping, and discrimination. Hopefully, we will have constructive dialogues about discrimination of minority groups, particularly international students and African Americans. And then we also want to promote interconnectedness, inclusion, and a sense of belonging. I think everybody here who's here today loves this college. I mean, we love this college, and we want to make sure that anybody who belongs to this college loves it as much as we do. Hopefully, we will achieve these outcomes, and it will affect faculty, staff, students, alums, and also New London community members. So I'm going to give a brief introduction of myself, and then I'm going to pass it over to other folks. My interest in this, one is I'm a person of color, obviously. I'm also a professor of psychology, and I would say that psychology as a discipline has not been one of the better disciplines in dealing with equity, diversity issues. And so that has always been very sort of relevant to me, that I am a minority within my own discipline. But what I ended up choosing to study was racial injustices in the legal system. And so I have always been focused on equity and diversity issues. And specifically, I look at people who have been wrongfully convicted and then exonerated. And one of the things that we know is Blacks are disproportionately exonerated, which implies that they're disproportionately wrongfully convicted. And certainly many of the reasons they're wrongfully convicted are structural reasons, they're systematic reasons, and they're reasons that can be eliminated. We can stop this from happening. So I've been passionate about thinking about equity, diversity, inclusion, and frankly, justice. We didn't include that in the name, but ultimately we're looking for justice for folks. So that's me. Many of the things that we know about the legal system and the injustices that happen in the legal system actually happen in higher ed. I was hoping, Kaya, you would be next and introduce yourself and just say a little bit about your interest.
Hi everyone, my name's Kaya Lane. I'm a senior public health major, health studies minor. And once I got the invitation to join the task force, I kind of was like, of course, I would love to be a part of it because I do love Colby-Sawyer and I've had many experiences like talking to different people on campus. So I felt that it was really good and I wish I was going to be here longer to like be on campus physically to help this program like elevate. But I feel like it was really important for me to join because I'm involved in dance club and many different organizations here. So I felt like it was really important that I have a connection with many different people on campus. And I actually want to like have more people here, diversity, people of color to feel more comfortable being in a predominantly white institution. And I feel like that was just like my purpose for joining the task force because I actually want people to get the exposure and the experience that I have. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Robin, do you mind going next, please?
I do not mind. I'm Robin Davis. I'm the Dean of Students at Colby-Sawyer. I'm interested in being part of the task force, certainly for personal reasons and professional reasons, personal interest, also personal experiences I've had working with students, the events that Lynn shared that have been going on are deeply moving to me. I want to make a difference at Colby-Sawyer. Lynn is correct. I love Colby-Sawyer as well. I enjoy working closely with our students. And I also supervise many different areas in student development who work, really sometimes people call it working on the front lines with students. Mm-hmm. And so how do I work with my staff? I mean, certainly my own self-work, but how do I work with my staff to, to provide an environment, the best environment for our students? How do I train my staff to be able to manage when these microaggressions happen? How do I help us have communications, have dialogue across difference? Yes, all of those things.
Thank you, Robin. Karen.
Good morning, I'm Karen Baldwin DeMeo. I am the director of the Student Learning Collaborative, and I also teach in and help to coordinate the first year writing program. My interests in the task force are, it's actually pretty closely to what we're connected to the work that we do in the Student Learning Collaborative. Learning centers grew up on college campuses around the same time as the various civil rights movements in the United States. And so we have that pretty deeply embedded in our ethos. So feminist and critical pedagogies guide our work as well. As a teacher, as a professor here, I recognize that whenever we teach, whatever we are teaching, race is always a part of the message, whether it's implicit or explicit. So I'm excited to be part of the work.
Thank you, Karen. Nina, I can't see you, Nina, but hopefully we can hear you. Oh, fantastic.
Hi there, everyone. So my name is Nina. I am a junior biology major with pre-medical and pre-veterinary tracks. And my apologies, I'm here and I'm in a medical conference all at the same time, but it is going really well. My interest overall in the task force, I was actually super honored to be able to be a part of it, or to be asked to be a part of it. And I've always kind of been very interested in diversity and inclusion in general. I definitely want to be the person that people are comfortable with, no matter what race they are, you know, just feeling more comfortable in different environments, especially an environment where you're a minority. I know it's never easy, no matter if you're an African-American person in a PWI or if you're a Caucasian person in an HBCU. I understand these are both very, very different experiences, and that they're very intricate. So I'm kind of just trying to be the bridge here, you know, just seeing what I can do to help in that aspect, and also to help connect with other African Americans on campus. I know there is a bit of disconnect between certain groups on campus. So just doing what I can to try to bridge those gaps here.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Jacqueline. I graduated in 2016 from Colby-Sawyer with a BA in English. I grew up in Newport, New Hampshire, which is just a short drive from Colby-Sawyer College. And so I'm very used to rural New Hampshire. I grew up in it. When I went to Colby-Sawyer, it was the most diverse day I ever experienced. And then I was talking about that to one of my friends who's from Boston and is Latina, and she said, that's crazy because Colby-Sawyer is the least diverse environment I've ever been in. So I'm really honored to be on this task force. After graduating, I was honored to have a fellowship at Colby-Sawyer College where I got to tell the college's story with the communications office. And then about a year and a half ago, I moved to DC for a job with a National Education Association. We work in K through 12 public education, and equity is at the core of our mission there as well. So it's really exciting to be both helping my alma mater and also being a part of the national conversation on what K through 12 education should be doing to be more equitable.
Fantastic. Thank you. Smriti, I can't actually see you. Oh, there you are.
I'm here. Hello, everyone. I am Smriti. I am an international student from Nepal. I am a junior nursing major. Being in the Race and Equity Task Force is a great honor for me. And I was actually one of the students who spoke in the faculty meeting. So that made me realize how much impact we can make if only we share our experiences and we try to educate people on what we're feeling, because because not all the time everyone can understand what's going on in our mind if we cannot communicate it properly. And I've always been big on educating people about my country, about people of color, about different experiences and diversity on campus. So I'm actually looking forward to do some more of that this year, being a part of the task force.
Thank you. Great. Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Sykes. I'm the Academic Vice President and Dean of Faculty. My interest in the task force, President Stubner had the senior leadership team go through several hours of training about EDI issues this summer, and it was really powerful, that the training that and soul searching that we all did to learn about these issues. And as part of that training, I was trying to figure out how I was going to be able to bring this forward. And I was to the faculty. You know, the academic side of the house is really where the place that I'm embroiled in. I was really grateful when Lynn came forward this summer and asked about the task force, because I thought it would be great for her to be able to launch this and me to be able to support it and figure out how to keep it moving, because I wasn't sure how to get this off the ground by myself. I do think that you know, a large percentage of our students are first generation and are rural students and have not lived in diverse places. And I think it's our job to educate them about these issues. And so I'm really excited that we'll be able to start this work. I think it's going to take a long time, but we're committed. The senior leadership team under President Stubner's guidance is committed to be in this for the long haul and really make institutional change that's going to make the student experience better.
Fantastic, thank you. Leah.
Hi everyone, my name is Leah. I'm a senior double major in business administration and communication studies with contemporary marketing and film studies minors. And honestly, my interest for this task force came from just simply coming from, so I come from Malden, Massachusetts, which is right outside Boston. So I definitely, the only time I was ever a minority was with my family because I'm a Chinese adoptee. And so coming here, I really was shocked with the lack of diversity, I guess. And I think that, like, for me, I would like to help implement change that's deeper than just showing that we're diverse or that we have diversity and that we are trying, like, because I think we should be doing more than just showing some students of color on the front page of the website, for instance.
Yes.
And yeah, and so for me, like, I think with being a minority on campus, I have experienced my share of racism and microaggressions and all that from students, faculty, and community members. So if I can do anything to help the next group of students that come in the future to help mitigate that and reduce that, then yeah, that's why I'm here.
Fantastic, Leah. And I think our last person that's going to speak is Peter White, who is our liberal education coordinator.
All right, good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Peter White. I'm a professor in the School of Arts and Sciences. I'm a biologist by training, but I'm also, like my colleagues, very interested and passionate about these types of issues that revolve around equity, diversity, and inclusion. So I was happy to be invited by Lynn, and I want to thank Lynn and all my colleagues on the task force for the work, this important work they've done to this point. As Lynn said, I am the current liberal education coordinator. I was appointed 2 years ago into this role by ABP Sykes, and at that time we were in the process of revamping and reimagining our liberal education program. And the new liberal education program had as one of its foundational components a first-year experience that was grounded in the UN SDGs, which is an acronym for the Sustainable Development Goals that were presented by the United Nations. And there's 17 of these SDGs, and they are big, large, global problems like hunger and poverty and access to healthcare. And there are others that are even more closely related to equity, such as gender equity and quality of education and access to education, and including decent work in strong and fair institutions, and even peace and justice. So these are complicated issues, and we're tackling them head on in that first year experience and introducing our students to those types of issues in an academic sense. This model that we adopted was campus-wide participation in developing in it. And it was a unanimous vote by the faculty to adopt it at the end, which had representation from all the departments, all the programs, all the schools that we currently exist as our structure today. So it was truly a global and unanimous effort on campus to integrate the SDGs into our liberal education with some intentionality and with some purpose. So we rolled it out this fall. It's exciting, it's new. Roughly a quarter of our faculty are involved in it. Of our full-time faculty have proposed a course for this current semester, and we expect more to come. So the participations there in all of these courses use the SDG themes as content, but more than that theme, EDI is a central component. It's an intentional incorporation into all the courses, regardless of which SDG they want to focus their materials on. In addition to that, vocation has become a central point for the liberal education first year experience, both in advising and in the academic portion of the classes. We want to see more underserved groups going to college and finding the passion, finding the thing they love. We want to have more underrepresented minorities or underserved groups to be future leaders in business. We want to see more women in the STEM disciplines. more gender balance in nursing, just generally more people finding their calling, their passion, and their purpose, regardless of color, gender, sexual orientation, or these other so-called indicators, regardless, to get all people to find what they need to find their passion. In addition to that first year experience, we've also adopted an integrated experience that's taken roughly in the third year of one's studies. And that exposes students to different communities. AVP Sykes mentioned the typical demographic of our rural and first generation students. So this integrated experience is going to intentionally bring students to interact with communities that might be unlike themselves, different socioeconomic backgrounds than they perhaps are used to, different age ranges, different gender compositions, sexual orientation, and simply other life experiences. And we intend to have this happen both locally, regionally, and even beyond when possible. So we're approaching it with both intentionality and urgency. We've already implemented many of these things, and others are being proposed and are under development. And so I'm really excited to help lead this direction of the college as we go forward. And in addition to that, we've recently established a task force like this one, but with smaller membership, but still to do an audit of all of our majors and programs across campus and to look at their curriculum to make sure that they are, again, to use that word, being intentional about incorporating EDI elements, equity, diversity, and inclusion, in their curriculum of all programs, whether that be the content, the authors or resources they use, or the other media and the things that they expose their students to. So we're integrating it in the first year and the junior year with intentional design and urgency, and then throughout all the major programs at different levels. So that's what we're doing in the Liberal Education Forum, and it's a campus-wide activity. It's going in all different areas, but I can speak to the Liberal Education component, and I thank you all for being here today. So with that, I'm going to look towards Dan Parrish, and I think we're going to open it up for any Q&A session. Dan?
Thanks so much, Peter, and thanks to all of you for providing background. We've got a number of people on campus. We have a handful of alumni with us. I just put a comment in the chat. We're obviously a small enough group that if you've got a comment or question, we should be able to handle this by audio, unless you can't make your audio work. You're always welcome to use the chat. But if you've got a question or a comment, or if anybody on the task force wants to revisit something that one of their colleagues said, just literally raise your hand or use the reaction, the hand raising reaction on Zoom, and I'll just call out your name. And if you can't figure out how to unmute yourself, I can unmute you if we need to do that. Any questions or comments that people want to add in?
I like the program so far. It's great.
Thanks so much, Jill. You got up very early to join us from California. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I'm very impressed with everything, everyone. This is wonderful.
Great.
I'm working with homeless. We're starting a $100 million program right off the bat, based after Haven for Hope in San Antonio. Sort of goes along
with this conversation. Where is that, Jill? Where in California are you?
My friend Janice Eaton, class of '57, my very good friend, I was visiting in San Antonio, and I've worked with homeless for 30 years. I visited her. We went to see Haven for Hope, which is a huge, huge homeless complex. It's started by Mr. Valero Oil and AT&T. It's huge. They sleep 800 people outside on mats, but they empower people rather than a step up. What is it? Not a hand down, but a step up. And so we just got a 5013C here in Sacramento. We're patterning it exactly after San Antonio.
Great.
And anyway, I didn't want to get off. I mean, really, diversity is a very large issue there with everyone, homeless, everyone.
Nan, did you have your hand up?
No, but I do now.
Great.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, I just wanted to say that my history goes back to being a member of the class of 1955, and it was Colby Jr. at that point, and we didn't have diversity or inequality, I think, at that time. But it's a subject that I've always been very interested in. We had a student from Norway who was on campus during those 2 years that I was there. That was our diversity.
I remember her.
And then when I left Colby Jr., I went to Detroit, and that was quite an awakening, having grown up in New Hampshire. But once I got to Detroit, I sort of jumped in and became very interested in talking to people that were unlike myself. And so ever since that time, I've been very, very interested. And I think it's high time that this task force was set up. And I'm delighted to hear from all of the people who serve on it, a wonderful group of people. And I have just myself been working on a project to celebrate 400 years of the Mayflower, having come across the Atlantic Ocean. And I'm a descendant of one of the Mayflower travelers. So that my assignment was to look into the Native American experience with the British as they came across the ocean and later settled in Plymouth. And it really opened my eyes tremendously. I had no idea of all the tragedies that went on during that period. And it's a two-sided situation. And prior to now, I only learned one side of it. And now that I feel that I recognize that there are two sides, I'm most interested in continuing on and opening up my mind even further.
Thank you, Nan. I think for even for so many of our students today, that that one-sided presentation of history is probably still true for a lot of them. It's a really valuable, it's a very valuable reminder of the perspective we emerge from, given the faculty who's teaching us or the resources that are available in our own community. Other comments, questions?
I think I recognize you, man.
I think to touch upon what you said, Dan. Oh.
Go ahead, Kaya.
Oh, okay. I think to touch upon what you said, I think it was like really important to acknowledge too, because I feel like ever since anything that's been happening, like during quarantine and over the summer, it was really like an awakening moment for me, only because it was just like, we've had so many instances of like racism and nothing was really done per se. And then it was just a whole chain reaction of everything just coming together. And I think it was really important too, because being here and being a minority student, I've been fortunate enough to have the resources and the funds to pay for school and to be able to have different experiences and different, like just different awareness of being involved with just different races. And it never really had, like, I never had a problem with it per se, but I think it's really important to, because I live in Dorchester in Boston, and it's a really, really diverse place. And my mom grew up in England, so she never taught me to like have a certain prejudice against people, and she was well aware of everyone, and Boston's so diverse. So then coming here, just like hearing people's stories, like, or opinions on me, like when I first came to school, they like, everyone would be like, oh, I went on these trips and went to this, and they assumed because I'm a person of color, I never got to go on a plane, or I never went on a cruise, or I never went to anything. And they were just really shocked because I went to a Montessori school 2nd to 8th grade, and that's a different type of learning, and that's a different type of exposure. So when they heard I went on these trips and I did all the same things they did, they were like, huh? Like, you're Black. How did you, how were you able to afford all these things? And I was just like, it's not just the color that makes things hard for people. It's what's you're being accessible to, like what's allowed around you. Because there's a lot of wealthy African Americans, there's a lot of wealthy Asians, there's a lot of wealthy international students. Like, it's not just based on your color. So I feel like that's what is something that really has to be like solidified and like stated here, that there are people that are still acceptable and people are still able to have the same opportunities as you. Because I just thought it was really shocking that people were so surprised that I did all these things and that I was basically on the same level or even had the same wealth or income as they did. And I was just, it's not crazy. It's just, you never were like aware of it. I don't know. It was just kind of like interesting to see that. And I just thought it was kind of important just to like tell them and like to educate them, like, yeah, this is happening. Like, African Americans, there's some of us that do have wealth. There's some of us that have these experiences. It's not just, I don't know. It was just kind of like interesting to see how people were raised and how people were taught certain things, and I feel like that's really important, because especially with everything going on, like I feel like in the past years people have been really vocal about their opinions, but now that things are happening, they're kind of quiet about it, but it's still coming out in ways that they don't really notice it.
These deeply ingrained projections that you sort of see coming at you, and that we all might make about others too. But yeah, that's a really important point.
Well said.
I wonder, Kaya, are you it sounds like you're finding that this year is very different than perhaps other years that you've been at Colby-Sawyer. I'm also seeing like a very different energy in the classroom this year. I can remember my very first year at Colby-Sawyer. I've been here 15 years. I taught a text in my writing class called Representing Whiteness in the Black Imagination by Bell Hooks. And I walked into this usually loud class and nobody was talking. Bureau people were talking. I was pulling and pulling and pulling and trying to get them to engage with the text. And finally, one of them, thank goodness, raised her hand and said, "Are we supposed to say black?" So that was my first year here. And I actually even had a student throw a pen at me from that class and say, "I don't want to talk about race." But just to contrast with that, this year, we also are reading various texts by various people of color, and the students are really, I think, ready, even though I have still a predominantly almost exclusively white class, they're really ready to engage with that material. So that to me is really exciting about this year at Colby-Sawyer.
Yeah, it's definitely been different, I would say. Like, normally just, I don't know, I think it's just everything that's happening. People are finally like realizing like it's either they do their part or they'll get called out for not doing their part. So I feel like once we actually ask people questions or once we get their opinion on their thoughts, I feel like that's important. Because I remember, Karen, we had for orientation, Nina and I were on like that Zoom call when we were trying to talk about with the orientation leaders for everything that was happening. And it was kind of like a different spectrum. Like Nina was touching upon like, oh, like if we can't come across these issues with race and like everything that's going on, we have a wide spectrum of like African Americans being angry at the situation. And then we have like looting, for instance, and then there's other people that are willing to have those conversations and being open-minded to other races and other questions. So I feel like that's also too something that even just minorities in general are also dealing with, trying to figure out how to have those conversations, because everyone has a right to feel how they feel. And I just think it's important to figure out the balance on campus of how we approach these topics, because there's some people that will be receptive to being called out, but some people might be like, okay, well, I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I'm not going to say anything at all. And they feel like that's better than not saying anything. So I think that moment where you and Nina, so at the beginning of the school year, we talked with student leaders and particularly students who were working in at the college, and there was a discussion. Part of the discussion was about how Black folks on campus had very different reactions or perhaps approaches to initiating and being in discussions about race on campus. And I think that was probably pretty eye-opening. And I'm really grateful that you and Nina both kind of stepped up to that conversation and were very honest about what your thinking was.
I'm not seeing any hands raised. Other questions, comments? Kaya, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I wanted to follow up on one thing that you said. I heard it as that for some students, this increased engagement that you and Karen have referred to, I don't know how to word this, might come from obligation or guilt rather than sort of energetically jumping into the issues and the conversations on their own. Did I hear that wrong, or do you feel like there's some sort of, I can't remember what you said, if I don't show up, people will be critical of it. Is some of this kind of dragging people into the conversation? Is that fair?
I would say so, yeah. Only because like, I know like for my class as a senior, I'm pretty sure like upperclassmen, we're more vocal about it and we
Yep.
have those conversations. But I think also too, as like an incoming student, you kind of trying to figure out yourself while all of this is going on, so you don't really know where your stance is. And then also to coming to college, your ideas and morals are probably different from your parents. So I think that separation too, or from how you were raised, is really important to like acknowledge, because I also find that for myself, just being an African American, when I came to Colby-Sawyer, when I was in my Montessori school, I could be friends with all these people, but I also had to think about, if I was to go to their homes, how would I be treated? And I think that's something that we also have to like think about when people come to college. Their perceptions of things aren't necessarily what they will end up being when they graduate. So I think the separation from not being with your family all the time and then forming your own opinions is two separate things. So giving that time to fully develop those opinions is important. And I feel like we have to give people time to understand those things too. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's really, really helpful. Go ahead, Robin. I'm sorry, I'm looking at where Robin is on my screen. Of course, she's in a different place for the rest of you. Sorry about that, but go ahead, Robin.
I'm at my home, that different place, right? I was just wanting to make sure that I put out there that in addition to the EDI task force, and in some sense partnering with that, we are, as senior officers, looking at the, I guess I would say policies, practices, procedures, outlooks, unintentional biases that we might have, the blinders that we might have when we're making decisions that are campus-wide decisions on the one hand, but also, in our individual kind of departments, just having a lens on that to really say what is the impact of how we're interacting with students and each other. What are ways that maybe unintentionally we are, not providing a safe space at the table for decision making, and are there ways that we can, well, there are ways that we need to create an environment where we diversify our staff as well. So I wanted to, just for folks to know that that's another part of what we're doing, really to speak to what Lynn said originally, like, the institution that we have and that we love. What is the institutional racism that we have, been a part of?
Thank you, Robin. I just wanted to add to that, actually. I was thinking as you were talking, Robin, of Field of Dreams and that line, if you build it, they will come. And I sort of feel like if we put in the structure, we will be able to get diverse staff and faculty. If we put in the right structure, we will be able to get a diverse student body. And we really do have to think about those policies and processes that not intentionally discriminated, but in fact have discriminated against people.
I think, Lynn, too, I mean, we've seen that, and I don't have numbers in front of you, but we've seen that play out quite a bit in the LGBTQ community, where we've built some innovative policies, and then we've seen that population increase and feel safe coming to the table for conversations, I hope. I'm sure that there are still mitigating factors there, but I agree that when we make our policies more inclusive, that they will come.
I received a question privately in the chat. The question basically boils down to, is there a process for students, and I think probably for faculty and staff as well, the question was, is there a process for handling discrimination? And I think probably the question gets to, for faculty, staff, students, is there a process where students have an opportunity to share this experience, whether it's through the citizenship education program. Robin, I don't know if you want to tackle that, and I'll just say we've got about 10 minutes left, so we'll kind of take this question on, and then Lynn, maybe we'll wrap up as we get to the end of this conversation. But Robin, do you want to start on that? And I don't know if Laura might have a perspective from kind of the way faculty might handle that.
I mean, from a student perspective, we do. And interestingly, was just having a conversation with a task force member last week, really for us looking at our policies around this. You know, so I could talk about our non-discrimination policy. I can talk about, you know, the policies that we have prohibiting and how we address violence, how we include mitigating factors such as, you know, that the behavior was motivated by bias.
How do students know what to do when something happens at them or towards them? How are they aware of, you know, what the next step is?
Yeah, I mean, I was, they're twofold, Dan. One is, you know, we have students who report to their RAs, who report to campus safety. People come to my office to report that. Is historically what we've done, and we want to make sure that students are aware of that. But I also want to take a moment to talk about one of the initiatives in my area is we're dusting off a bias-related protocol that we used to use fairly robustly several years ago to really address those instances where, you know, those, you know, microaggressions or maybe even a macroaggression is happening, but we don't know who the person was who did it, for example. So if you think about like graffiti that might be put up in a residence hall or on somebody's whiteboard or door, and we don't know who the person was who did that, right? It's so, and that is not uncommon that would happen. And so, you know, in terms of handling that through a conduct system, when you don't, you know, have somebody to take through the conduct system, this bias-related protocol will give us an opportunity to have those conversations with the community as a whole, in terms of if folks are familiar with like restorative justice and those conversations around like what are our expectations of a community, what did this, if we use my example of graffiti, how does that affect all of us in this community? You know, how can we reclaim our community so we're not just making folks feel like that thing happened and then there was no response to that, you know, that impacted me negatively and yet nothing happened. And so I kind of feel re-victimized around that. So those are just some, you know, I want to be sensitive to other people, to Laura being able to step in to talk about the faculty too, but those are just some snippets on what we're doing. So again, dusting off that bias-related protocol and really talking about that broadly and advertising that to students so they recognize that that's an option as well. That's my project that I'm working on this semester.
Another important resource, I think, for the students is we have a new diversity and inclusion fellow, Nabila Abdallah. And so that's another person that she's fairly new to the campus, but is making herself known and making herself known to students as a resource to be able to talk about these issues and find out, you know, she can point them where to go when they feel like they've been discriminated against or have need to talk to somebody, need somebody to understand what they're going through. I think in the academic area, I think this education needs to go on for faculty more, the conversations that we started last year where, you know, I think in an educated community, what happens sometimes is a student will come to a faculty member and talk about something that's happened and they say, well, you know, the person didn't mean it, or, you know, they didn't really mean to say that or something, and sort of diminish what that experience is for the student. And the more that we can continue to educate the faculty about what they need to do and how they need to address these things when they come up in a class, and if they don't get satisfaction, you know, with a faculty member, then to come to my office, you know, and to make sure that we find a way for students to be able to be understood and to be heard, and deal with it as an institution.
That's really helpful. Thanks. Go ahead, Smriti.
Hi. So in that aspect, before this semester, we didn't really have a real talk about race and equality and everything on campus that involved everyone as it is involving right now. So I did not feel like we had that one contact person whom we could go and tell them, because I would go to either one of my professors that I trusted, or go to one of my friends or a student leader or someone that I trusted, but we didn't really have one person. So for me, I individually wanted people to really, my internet is unstable, sorry, to really have a space and a platform to talk about. So President Stubner, she recommended me to be a Newman Civics Fellow. I'm sorry, to be a Newman Civics Fellow. So now I am creating a platform for the students to speak up and to share their experiences regarding race and ethnicity on campus. So because I did not see anything, I wanted to create something. So I think that's something that our college is going to do good in this coming near future.
Great, thanks. We're at about 5 minutes to noon. This has been a really wonderful conversation. I appreciate the task force members really walking us through the work that you're doing and the questions and comments. I know we only have a small number of alumni with us, but they represent from Nan, who graduated in 1955, on up to a member of the class of 20 and a range of classes in between. So it's really, really helpful to hear different perspectives. Lynn, I don't know if you've got a closing comment about the work of the task force in the year ahead and kind of where you're headed, what your outcome is on the other end of this.
Yeah, I actually do, and I apologize, folks, for stepping out for a little bit. My phone is just blown up with some personal stuff, so I apologize for that. But what I would say is this is hard, difficult work. We're not going to solve problems within 1 year. And so hopefully nobody expects that suddenly we have a new climate on campus simply because there was a task force. The purpose of the task force is to start laying the foundation to have ongoing assessments of our diversity, inclusion, equity, to have ongoing opportunities for people to talk about our campus. And so that is not going to just happen this year, it is going to happen going forward. And slowly, I think we will see changes at this campus. And I'm hoping that we have a more diverse faculty and staff. And we're starting to really talk about how we can get that done. I'm hoping that when we have diverse students on campus, that they do have a point person, that they absolutely feel like they can trust to, one, just talk about things. Not everything needs to have a consequence, but maybe just being able to talk about issues of diversity, but also a point person who can actually provide resources and strategies on how to deal with some of the interpersonal microaggressions, etc. And the last thing that I would just say really quickly is it has been fantastic to have senior staff be so taking the lead on this and really wanting to think about the processes across the college. So it's not just student development. It's not just the academic area. It is all areas across the campus. And I've just been so thrilled to even see folks from facilities turn up for a workshop. I mean, that's amazing. So I'm really thankful to senior staff for taking a lead on this.
Thank you. And I think, Sue, you want to, here you go.
Hi, everyone. This is Sue Stubner. I just been listening to the conversation and just want to thank the task force and thank Lynn for your leadership with the group and thank everyone on the task force for sharing their voices today. Thank the alums who came out and listened to the conversation. As Lynn just articulated so well, this is going to be work that takes some time. But I just want to echo that I am absolutely committed to keeping this as a top priority for our institution so that we can address some of the institutional and cultural issues so that every student feels safe on campus. to be who they are and to be able to have a full Colby-Sawyer experience, that they can love the institution as much as we all do. So just wanted to be sure to say thank you to everyone today.
Thanks so much, Sue, and Lynn, and all. Thanks for your thoughtful comments, the great questions. We really appreciate it. We will thank you for putting up with all my typos in the chat. I don't type well or fast enough, so thank you for that. There are other programs going on today. If you go to the Colby-Sawyer website, there's a box right in the middle that says Stay at Home Coming, and you can see what's coming up next, or you can check your email for all of those links. And thanks again for the conversation. I really appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great day. For those of you who are not up here, it is now beautiful and sunny in New London. I woke up to 2 inches of snow, and now it's a lovely day. So we're headed in the right direction. Thanks again, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.